Bum, 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 bum. Fast. Let me take a look. What else? I see it. Okay. Yeah, fast looks okay. You know, I mean, there's a lot of these kind of bear flaggy type of stocks. So that's something to kind of keep mind of is, I see what you're trying to do. You get this kind of big breakdown, a heavier volume, and then a pop back. You know, so that could work. Okay. Look, so we had a little bit, we had kind of a little back and forth. We had a little bit of a red day into QQQ as we're just sitting on this 200 SMA. And then now we're kind of popping back pre-market here. But yesterday, the market was just in a range. It popped down, popped back up, popped back down. When you're trying to kind of bottom and you're a little bit oversold, this is actually really kind of normal. So just kind of keep an eye on this kind of channel that the market's been sitting in. I'd use a 15-minute chart when you're bringing up your market indexes. You know, and you'll have to kind of play this channel. If you break below, you go back to those lows. If you stay in the channel, which is possible, then what you have to do is just play the stocks that are in play. So there's two different aspects of like when you're trading. You know, there are stocks that just move with the market, and then there are stocks that are in play, meaning that they have like sector momentum or some other stuff like that, and then they get going. And so, you know, when the market's in a range, it's kind of one of the things that you got to do is kind of really focus on what are the hot sectors and then what stocks have like PR, earnings out, because those stocks will move independent to what's happening in the market. So especially if you're like a newer trader, if you're a newer trader and you're like kind of having trouble matching the market with, you know, your individual plays, you know, if you play stocks in play, those will move independently to what's happening in the market. So just keep an eye on this kind of range that we're in. We're very well could just be in a bear flag and kind of roll over. So that's also a possibility. Hey, Paul, what's up? Andrew, how you doing? Good, good, good. BB, what's up? TNA, how you doing? Mr. Devasto, Mr. Harper, what's going on? As always, a pleasure. So let's take a look at the watch list. So you're right, Paul, pot stocks are hot today. You know, obviously the best chart out of the group is the CGC. You know, you had 1 test, 2 test, 3 test, 4 test breakout. You had expanding volume. So the day before, the volume was 11.4 million. And this particular day rolled up to, you know, it rolled up to shit. I mean, you've got yourself 23.9, so that's actually pretty good, right? When you got that kind of volume, you got to be really, I mean, you got to respect it. You know what I mean? You got to respect it. So that's where we got to kind of go with the action. So even with the market being dicey, you know, put these pot stocks on the watch list. You can see the action on these bad boys yesterday, right? First pullbacks up to VWAP are always really powerful. And what you've noticed with these pot stocks is anytime they close strong, they tend to gap up the next day. You know, that's been the play for TLRY especially, really for the last like couple months. Anytime it closes strong end of day, it'll gap up like 10 points, 5 points, and kind of you're seeing that. See, I like that strong close. You know, when you get that strong close, it starts to open up way hot. So you're starting to see these. So I'd kind of keep both of these on your watch list. I find CGC just easier to trade than TLRY due to the lack of spread. TLRY, I've had some of my bigger gains in the last couple months on TLRY and some of my bigger losses on it due to the damn spread. Because when you catch it and it's running, then, you know, the spread, of course, is, you know, plays in your favor because, you know, you're kind of selling into the spikes. But if it's not, then, you know, what typically happens is, oh, man, like if it doesn't, then what typically will happen is, you know, you've got to sell it on the bid when it starts tanking down, and then, you know, you don't want to do that, especially if you have 300, 400 shares of that thing. Yeah, you sell it on the bid at a 150 spread, you end up getting smoked out. But Kron also finally came through. You know, I didn't like the gapper yesterday because it was gapping into resistance, but it bolted over it at some point in the day. You know, we took our eye off of it a little bit here, and then had a nice kind of smooth runner on it. 26 million shares of volume, can't really doubt that. This thing's gonna be hot today too. So I'd keep all these on the list. Also MBEV, you very well may see a run to 8 or 9 as it kind of gets back into that resistance. Most likely, you got a day or two in these pot stocks. They've been running for the last few days, so they typically run in groups of 3 to 5 before they just kind of coming right back down. So definitely in play today when you have something like this, like an NBEV or something like that, right? Watch it for that first pullback or that first kind of the first big dip on it. If you miss it at the open, this is kind of, you'll see this all the time where it'll pop like 10, 15%, and then you get that first big dip, like a real dip. You don't want something, a dip is not something that pulls back like 5, 10 cents, right? That's not a real pullback, right? You want to pull back to some level of support, like like VWAP, right? VWAP midday after the first hour works really good. So watch that first pullback. Those typically on these ones that trade a little bit rowdier end up being the really good entries. Kind of same type of thing with Cron. When you're thinking about how to enter it, I always, I like those first pullbacks. See, like if you get a gap up in the morning, you get that first pullback to the 9 or something like that, you can catch yourself a nice easy spike, but that's a little bit more low risk and trades a little bit more slow. Mr. Jameson, how you doing? Mr. Brad, what's going on? So definitely keep these on the list. GWW's, this is a gap down play that may actually have a little juice on it, breaking under the 200 SMA here. We'll watch this thing for an ORB. It's only got 44 million share float, but it's like a huge company, 17 billion shares. So there very well may be a spread on this. You're not seeing a huge amount of pre-market volume yet. So the caveat on something like this is going to be, is there a spread? If there's not at least 500,000 shares in volume, it's not going to have necessarily the liquidity at the open to get in and out. And so at that point, I usually just leave those alone. You got this PTLA too. It's bear flagging down over here. You're already getting a gap down on this thing, but once again, minimal liquidity. The key on this thing is going to be like, does it have, right? Does it have the juice, right? And there's some other ones that are moving around that people have been asked about, like Adobe and stuff. The problem with Adobe is that, it's gapping up today on some kind of news, but it's gapping up into resistance here, right? It's not in a supply-free zone, and if you don't have something in a supply-free zone, what's going to happen, right? They don't have the juice to really get going. So just something to kind of keep mind of here. Garrett, what you watching, buddy? Robin, what you watching? On the other side of things, there's a couple other kind of pot stocks that you can watch in case you missed the runs on the other ones. Now, this one's more of a grinder, which for some of you guys is probably okay, but it just doesn't have the range. But you can keep this ACBF on the watch list. This NEPT had a volume pop yesterday, doubled its normal volume, and it looks like you're right at this kind of flat top breakout. If you choose to ignore this candle over here, sometimes when you're doing technical analysis and you get one of those big wicks and it messes up your chart, you just got to kind of close your eyes and get rid of it. That's just the nature of the game sometimes. This APHQ could also bust loose today. It needs to really get over that 16. It looks like this is kind of the last, it's looking like there's kind of a sector-wide push in some of these bad boys. They're all gapping up today. So keep an eye on this one too, because this one's been consolidating for a lot more time. Really since September, 6th or 7th, it's been consolidating, trying to get past that kind of 16, 17 level, right? It's tested into it a few times. If it can get over it, then, you got something. Remember that the more times you test a resistance level or a trend line, then the more powerful it can be, right? And it looks like tomorrow there's some news coming out in Canada anyways. So, you may run into that, and then probably you'll just roll over after that. It's always buy the rumors, sell the news in trading, historically. So something to kind of keep an eye on. If the market rolls over, we still want to have kind of Roku and SQ as kind of bear flags over here. They probably both have a little bit more room to pop in general because the market's still oversold. And you're starting to see some pre-market action in them. But overall, I want to keep these couple names on the watch list. in case the market starts to head back down, what we're going to need is some bear flags on the daily charts to short to play back to the downside. And you can't really ignore something like this, right? You know, $35, $40 drop. And so it probably has some room down to 80, 82. But at some point, we'll have to roll this thing back over. Dun, 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 dun. And then one more short we have on watch list. Simon put this on the watch list in our mentorship group. You know, you got kind of like a long-term flat bottom breakdown. And this one, you know, it trended pretty nicely all day. It's opening up green, so we may have, you know, we may have a little bit of a rollover on that thing. Hey, Anthony, how you doing? I don't know if oh, yeah. Hey, good catch. Good job on that bad boy. I haven't been trading much OTCs really ever, but hey, you got a nice little ripper on that one. Yeah, so Send is not your like classical gapper play, and the reason, BB, is that this one was a buyout. Twilio bought out the company for 2 billion shares. They got exchange stock, so they get like, you know, half a share of Twilio, which is like double the price for every share that they switch over on. You know, on Send. And so I don't know exactly how it's going to trade, because it's not necessarily your classic earnings play where it's like, hey, we had this good contract or we had something going out, and then all of a sudden, right, it's running on that kind of news. It's just a share exchange at this point. So, you know, what are you going to do? So as always, guys, man's got to go and do what he's got to do. Trade well today, trade fast. If you guys are having fun on the YouTube lives, give me a thumbs up. We always like to spread the word. And as always, I'll be in the Bulls on Wall Street chat room doing my thing all day or whenever I'm done trading. And you guys are always welcome to join us and have a little fun. I'll see you guys around. Hasta mañana. Let's do this, bros.